healing. Annie Emprima, welcome to the Ravi Athale perspective. I have really been looking forward to this conversation because your story is unlike I have done on the show.
Ravi, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
You're most welcome. So, Annie, let's begin at the beginning. Before the trauma work, before the healing work, before the spiritual awakening, who was Annie Emprima growing up?
Stubborn, oldest
Okay.
child. I grew up in a Catholic Arab family. So my dad wanted a boy, and he kept going until he got boys. So I grew up in a family that didn't see women as equal. And I grew up in a family that had dysfunction, but I wasn't aware of it at the time. I didn't even realize it until probably my late 30s that my life wasn't so normal.
It was just because of your dad wanting kids, like especially son, or it was something different?
It was a little bit different. Dad was much older than my mother. My mother had just turned 17. My dad flew to Lebanon, married a young woman, and she didn't speak his language. He didn't speak hers. Even though my dad was 100% Lebanese, he didn't speak Arabic. So my mother didn't speak English. And that created a bit of dysfunction and dissociation. They being in a household where they didn't know how to communicate, and they were dissociated enough that they didn't really know how to show nurturing acts of love. And so I grew up in a house I have no memories of either of my parents holding me, caring in what we might think of as a traditional nurturing way. I think I was 13 the first time my dad hugged me, and it was because my parents had just gotten separated.
And so that was the first time ever?
I have no memories of sitting on his lap. I have no memories of being held by my mother. There's a photo when I was first born, but there's not a lot of memories.
And that was because you were female and he always wanted a son?
Yes, but I also think it was because it was two humans that had trauma that didn't have support to process the trauma. Now, my grandparents, my father's parents, I have a lot of memories with my grandparents, not my parents. And we lived 5 houses away. So when we were kids, myself, my 3 siblings, we would walk through our neighborhood. We lived on one corner and my grandparents lived on the other. So we would walk through other people's backyards to get to my grandmother's house. So if we were hungry, we would just go to my grandmother's house. If we weren't getting the attention we needed, we would just walk down to my grandmother's house. But I didn't know that was not normal. It didn't feel not normal. It wasn't not normal until I started looking back at family dynamics that I realized there were some things that were a little bit off about how I grew up.
So growing up, Annie, were there signs even early in life that you were emotionally different from others? And then eventually you joined United States Army. That's massive life decision. So what pushed you towards military service?
To answer the first part of your question, when I was young, like toddler, I had imaginary friends. Friends.
Okay.
No one said anything about it other than I was probably in preschool and my grandmother and my family would say, you can't have imaginary friends anymore. You got to grow up. And so I let go of my imaginary friends. And then to answer the second part, how I got to the military, I think when the Twin Towers collapsed in New York City in 2001,
9/11.
In 9/11, I felt very helpless. Like I wanted to do something, as did millions of Americans and people around the world. We were watching something happen and I didn't know how to regulate my own emotions of the sense of helplessness of not having something to contribute to make something better. And so I felt like I needed to be skilled in something. I wasn't a nurse. I wasn't anything that would be useful in the moment. So that kind of sat in the back of my mind for 7 years. Then in 2007, right before I joined the military, I was with someone who now my ex-husband, but at the time we were engaged, and we were struggling financially, and I just could not get ahead. And I felt like I was the one responsible for getting the family ahead, not my husband, soon to be husband, who coped by spending on things. And so at the time, they were offering a $20,000 bonus to join the National Guard.
Was he also a part of National Guard?
He had joined the active duty Army right out of high school. We knew each other. We went to different high schools in different towns, but where we grew up, it was 13 miles
Okay.
versus Las Vegas, where 13 miles can be 2 exits on a freeway. We knew each other in high school, and then he joined the military right after he graduated. So he had Army in the background of his mind and his experiences. He went to Bosnia. So there was a little bit of influence in me going to the Army because that was a language he spoke. And I thought, okay, maybe that would bond us better for me to
What
have
was
this,
that language?
the language of the military. Like he spoke
Oh, okay,
military.
military. Because I come
And
from an army background as well. Our father was a retired army officer. Precisely.
different, so acronyms and
Mannerism.
yes, that it felt like something that could be familiar, and I would have his support in doing that. So that's how I got in, not necessarily why I stayed. It was the combination of financial need and not wanting to feel helpless if another 9/11 occurred.
Okay. Annie, the military changes people sometimes physically, sometimes mentally, and sometimes emotionally. So, what did those 9 years teach you about discipline, survival, and identity?
It's interesting that if you had asked me this while I was still in the military, my answers would be very different. I would
Okay.
talk about integrity, and I would talk about leadership. I would talk about esprit de corps and camaraderie. But I think looking back from where I am today in the work that I'm doing now, the military taught me about trauma. It taught me about the consequences of young men joining the military and not being able to express emotions because of the up-tempo of military culture and how that causes consequences later in their life. So my answer today is very different than it would have been 15 years ago.
Okay. So, let's say 15 years ago, you're still in army. So, what you would have said?
I would have said that it was about integrity, it was about leadership,
Comrade.
it was about working together and unifying all these different people from different parts of the country, from different territories of the United States, and then going and serving on a deployment with people from all over the world. There were so many countries serving with us. The Queen's Army, we had the Canadian, British, there were the Anzacs, the New Zealand, Australians were with
Australia, New
us.
Zealand.
So we had people from all over the world in units where English wasn't the primary language. So we had France, Spain, a little bit of Singapore. So we had a representation of a very global group.
How did you guys used to interact?
In what way?
Like you said, there were people from France, Singapore, and they
Mhm.
didn't know English, or the English was not their first language.
Everyone spoke English
Or
on
broken
them.
English.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There was no way to navigate without knowing English in
Yeah,
those
because English is a
transitions.
globally spoken language.
Yeah.
Was there a point during your military journey where you felt something internally starting to shift? Something inside you was no longer the same person?
It started 4 days after arriving in Kuwait. I
Oh,
4 days in, and we're given a couple days to acclimate to the time difference because there's a very large time difference
it is.
between the United States time zones and the Kuwaiti time zone. So after a few days, then you report to duty. So it was my first day in uniform. I'm walking out of my sleeping barracks, heading across the street to my working tent. And I say tent, for those that are not familiar with military camps and installations, these are tents that stay up for many years and you have offices inside them, but they can't be permanent. They're tents. So
I've
I'm
seen it
walking to the
many
tent.
times because
Yeah.
my dad was in army. I totally resonate on this.
Yeah. So I'm walking to the tent and I'm just feeling like something is touching my skin and I have no concept of what it could be. It's not even a thought in my mind that it's a metaphysical thing. So it took me about a month to realize it wasn't prayer in the air, which was my first thought because
But why, after 4 days deployment in Kuwait, suddenly things changed in your mind? What was like? There has to be something that struck and said, Annie, I need to do something different.
I don't know why it happened when it happened.
Like,
To this day, that's been 10 years. I don't know why. I don't know what the catalyst was, other than that was a catalyst for what was to come. But I don't know why in that moment my senses cranked up. I don't know why there was a trigger point there.
okay. So, Annie, you have spoken openly about 2016 being one of the biggest turning point in your life.
Yeah.
And what makes your story powerful is that from that outside, many people probably had no idea what you were carrying internally. So, take us back there. What happened in 2016?
So this is unfolding. My senses turn up and I'm very confused. And I already feel like an outsider in my military unit. Looking back, I'm like, okay, did I have some high functioning autism? I'm now understanding I had ADHD. And so my sense of feeling like I fit in with my unit, I already felt like I didn't fit in. I already felt like I was this oddly shaped piece trying to fit into a puzzle that I didn't belong in. I didn't feel like I adapted into my unit. And so I already felt like an outsider going into the deployment.
Did you seek help from anyone?
No, because the idea of telling someone that you're hearing voices while you're flying with ammunition and a weapon in and out of Iraq is not the wisest choice. So
I can understand.
I knew enough to know that I couldn't go to anyone. I couldn't go to mental health and say I'm hearing voices. I couldn't go to the chaplain and say I'm hearing voices. And I couldn't tell my friends because I didn't think they could understand or hold the space for what was happening. And I didn't want to risk them going to the chaplain or mental health because that would have pulled me out of the deployment, but it wouldn't have brought me home. It would have brought me to Germany for a psychological evaluation. So I didn't say anything to anyone. I just kept internalizing it.
And I reckon that is what eventually becomes a volcano inside that was ready to erupt, if I'm not wrong. Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So, Annie, for people who have never ever experienced PTSD,
Yeah.
it's difficult to truly understand it. So,
Yeah.
what does PTSD actually feel like from inside?
PTSD is so unique to everyone diagnosed with PTSD. There's some blanket things. For me, mine might be a bit unique because it felt like swirling, like my head was spinning and spinning of trying to process things I couldn't process. I had nowhere safe to put it. So it kept building up and it's the volcano. So it feels
So,
like a volcano erupting in
did
my
it
head.
start somewhere in Kuwait, like just after 4 days? Can I say this was one of the symptoms?
I think that the PTSD started before I even landed in Kuwait. We had to fly to Fort Hood to do all the paperwork to be able to go to the deployment. So I was already exhibiting symptoms then, but I didn't know it. And then it compounded when I was deployed. And so for me, what it felt like very much like a volcano going off in my head. And I couldn't tell anybody there was a volcano. It was masking, a lot of masking. I'm fine. I'm all right when I wasn't. But the biggest indicators were after I got home from the deployment, when I tried to read an email, and it was just a few weeks after I got home.
And when was that? Which year?
That would have been November of 2016. We left for the deployment January 2nd, and we came back, I think, November 10th. So I'm trying to reply to an email and I can't finish reading the email. Like I'm trying to read this email. And by the time I got to the 6th paragraph, I couldn't remember the first paragraph.
Okay.
And then I would try to formulate a reply and I couldn't remember what I just read. So I'd have to go back and try to read it. And then I would forget what I just read. And I was playing this loop and realizing I couldn't even reply to emails. I was so much spinning. I couldn't hold enough information. If you had said something to me, I couldn't repeat back what you said. And that's when I was like, so there's something wrong with my brain. There's something wrong. And I used power walking. I could power walk for 5 miles a day. And that was how I shed a lot of my thoughts. But I got physically injured. So I couldn't even get 50 meters without starting to limp.
So what happened? You said physically injured. What happened?
My knee, I had rolled my ankle at the beginning of my deployment, my right ankle.
Okay.
So then I started overcompensating on the left side to carry the weight of the ankle, but I still had to do PT because I didn't get a waiver for my ankle. So I was still doing the physical training for my physical training test that we had to do twice. So I'm running on the track, which weakened my knees. And then a few months later, we were going into Iraq and our plane got shot at. It took ground fire. So instead of landing in Taji, where I was supposed to be, we had to land in Baghdad.
Your plane got a shot.
My plane got shot.
Oh,
yeah,
and
but
how
that
did
was
you
like,
guys survive?
it was ground fire. They get shot at
Okay.
every day. This is not a big, this wouldn't be the big scary story
Okay.
because they get shot at every time they go into Iraq. There's no,
Okay.
they're like, yeah, it happens every day. So we were grounded in Baghdad. And when we're flying, you fly dark. The planes fly dark. There's no lights to indicate that there's a plane in the sky because you don't want to get identified. So we came in dark, combat landed into Baghdad. And then because we didn't know where it was coming from, we had to get off the plane as fast as we could. So they came in, they grabbed the cargo, like these forklifts come in, they grab the cargo because it's a big C-130 cargo plane. So the cargo has to go out first before you can get off. So the cargo's going out, you grab your gear and you got to run off. And you're jumping off at maybe 2 feet, but I had 2 feet, 80 pounds of gear, a lot of adrenaline, and what had already started to compound as PTSD. So my body was already tense. My nervous system was already overworked. So when I was running with all that gear, I injured my ankles, my knees, and my wrists, carrying all the gear and running fast. So that was what caused me to not be able to walk by the end of the deployment.
Oh, okay.
I was shot. It was injured enough that they were already starting to do the paperwork for my surgery
Okay.
before I even left Kuwait.
Makes sense
So
now.
that brings you up to the point where I can't power walk. And that was my release. Other people go to the gym, other people box. Power walking was my thing, walking really fast. And I couldn't do that. So then everything's boiling in me. I don't have a new way to expel that pressure. And I'm now at the point where I can't read an email.
Yep. And that is what I'm coming to. So
Yeah.
during that period, Annie,
Yeah.
you've said your life started collapsing. Relationships,
Yeah.
identity, friendships, even your sense of self.
Yeah.
How dark did things really get?
It wasn't suicidal ideation dark.
Okay.
It was a different kind of crisis dark. It was,
Such as?
there was so much rage in my body, so much rage, and I didn't know where to put it. So that rage was hitting me because I didn't have anywhere to put it. And so much so that there was a point where I fell on my knees. I was walking up the stairs. I got a few steps. I fell onto my knees. I didn't have any energy left to get back up. I was so depleted from what I had endured. There was no more resources in my own body to stand back up. So it was hard.
Rage was, can I say, because of you seeking some answers to the questions and there was nobody to give you the correct answers to it? Can I say?
No, it was more than that. It was toxic leadership. It was betrayal of people I trusted. It was things outside my control that impacted me, but I couldn't fix it. It was a sense of helplessness. It
Okay.
was a lot of things happening, a lot of chaos on my deployment, but not battlefield chaos. It was like equal opportunity complaints with my leadership. It was sexual harassment cases. It was
Oh,
court
okay.
martial. It was a first sergeant that would do things that were very spiteful but covert. I was navigating traumatized people as a traumatized person, navigating traumatized people and
Yes.
trying to survive the administrative side of deployment, not so much the battlefield side.
So
That wasn't my getting shot at on a plane was the least of my worries.
I can understand. So was there ever a moment where you genuinely thought, I don't know if I can come back from this?
No, but there was a moment when I genuinely thought, God, this is hard.
Because the entire world fell apart? Can I say
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
everything. When we look at support layers, I came home thinking when I get home, I'll take care of it when I get home. Everything will get better when I get home. And that ended up being an internal lie because I got home and I found I was in a household with other dissociated people. There was no one to catch me. My husband was dissociated, my son was dissociated, and I'm swirling with PTSD. There was no one. It was I am the most broken in the room, and I'm the one that has to hold other people up. There's nothing left in me.
But
There's
why
nothing
your
left in me to do
husband
that
and son didn't think of you first?
because my husband had his own traumas
Okay.
that he did not resolve that got activated with me leaving for the deployment. My son and my husband played a lot of video games while I was gone. So my husband dissociated and coped in the way that he knew how to cope, which my son mimicked. So when I came home, my son had the tablet.
Yeah.
He could not separate from YouTube. I couldn't get the tablet to come down to look at his face. He had spent so many hours over the course of that year in
Oh,
front of YouTube,
screen addiction.
the screen addiction, and I could not. I'm trying to hold myself from falling down, and I've got a kid that can't separate and a husband that's there but not there. And that was the volcano of I don't even have anyone to catch me. And the people that were my closest friends couldn't understand what I was going through. And my closest friend, one of my closest friends at the time, her brother was in the military and he deployed at the surge in the 2001, 2002 era with the United States Army. And then he ended up getting dishonorably discharged. So he didn't qualify for any benefits. And so there was this anger at me for coming home with a disability that the Army was processing for me. And her brother didn't get that. So
Okay.
the big gap now between the person that could have caught me. And so it wasn't my husband, it wasn't my son, it wasn't my close friend. And then my business was falling apart because I couldn't reply to emails. So everything that I used to grab onto for stability broke in front of me. And that's what landed me on my knees that day when I fell.
Ah, that is so intense, so deep, if I have to say that.
Yeah.
Annie, I think something unexpected happened at the same time as all this pain. You describe experiencing what you call a spiritual awakening. For some people listening, that may sound like abstract or difficult to understand. So,
Oh,
what
for sure.
exactly happened to you
It was
besides
difficult
whatever
for
you
me to
told me?
understand. And I at least had some language behind it. I don't know how to explain it, but it was, if I had to explain it now as a metaphysical trauma researcher, I would say the central part of my brain was so stressed from trauma that it cranked open in the same way that someone doing psychedelics would have access to. So if anyone's
Okay.
ever done psilocybin, mushrooms, how it opens the central part of the brain and you get to
Yeah.
tap into the wiser part of who you are. But I was permanently on that state. Like I was in that heightened awareness and it wasn't going down. So it was like every day, and even today, every day I'm microdosing without touching anything. Just something opened up in a part of my brain, and I wouldn't want to shut it off now, but I wouldn't know how to shut it off if I did. So When I hear things, it's not, sometimes it's auditory, like it's
Yeah.
loud, but most of the time it's the same way I might talk to myself silently and have an internal dialogue, how there might be, for some brains, they might hear different voices when they talk to themselves internally with God or higher power or the
Superpower.
person that they're angry with. Yeah. That that's how I hear it most of the time, is just this like internal earbud that comes in like a whisper.
Okay.
I can feel it in my brain. I can tell you where in my brain it's coming from, but it's hard to explain that to someone who has never experienced it because it is very abstract and not everyone can access it. So it's not like I can teach someone how to hear internally, which is where the metaphysical piece comes into the work I do. Is I'm a trauma researcher that happens to have this capability, superpower, added supplement to my functioning that gives me a heightened awareness in what I'm experiencing.
That is so true. So, one thing I appreciate about your work, Annie, is that you don't approach spirituality in a fantasy driven way.
No.
You speak about it from lived experience. So, how would you explain spiritual awakening in most grounded and practical way possible?
I think if anyone has ever had a major life event where they had a near death experience, or they've done psychedelics, or they've done something like a fasting that really brought them into feeling this internal awareness, that that would be a smaller degree of spiritual awakening. You're awakening to mind, body, spirit, the third attribute of the whole that has this intense wisdom. And once you have
Okay.
that wisdom, it changes you because you're no longer the person that was blinded by a truth. So you can't unsee what you now see.
Do you believe, Annie, sometimes trauma destroys the version of us that was never truly us to begin with?
Sometimes it destroys people, and sometimes it cracks things open that have always been there.
Okay.
Depends on how supported the person is in their trauma journey, the trauma healing journey, and how their belief system allows for transformation.
And this transformation, like when you look back today, do you feel your breakdown was actually the beginning of your rebirth?
Yes, in many ways.
And what are these ways, if you can elaborate?
I wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing now. I wouldn't feel so purpose driven. I didn't feel grounded in my life before. I didn't feel like I understood the meaning of why I was here. I didn't feel like I was being very useful. I didn't feel like I was contributing in the large vision impact of a society.
Okay.
I feel that now. I feel this is my life purpose. This is my life path. And I will be doing this until my mind cannot allow me to do this anymore.
And what was the hardest emotional truth you had to confront during that period?
Oh, that's a long list. A lot of the truths that I had looking back is recognizing that so many of the people that I interacted with and I converged with did not have the fairest of life experiences, that a lot of their behaviors and choices were a result of trauma, which was no different than me and my choices being a result of trauma. So it forced me to have more compassion, even with the people that were causing the pain. And another truth was I thought I was in a relationship of love, and I realized I was not. I was in a relationship of being a seat filler. And that hit me so hard when I realized that the person I was with was never with me for me. I asked for a divorce on a Saturday, And not even 24 hours later, he was back on a dating site looking to replace someone for that position. And
So that
so,
was one of the personal betrayal.
oh, yeah, because that cracked open and it forced me to look at all the other truths in our marriage. And I had not been willing to see that. I was
How
in this
long were you married?
10 years.
And 10 years, that person, just like this, wanted to leave you and go on a dating site on the very next day.
Yeah, I did not feel like I was so angry that I had been there for him through a lot of moments in his life, going back to school, losing a job. And it was like I came back with this what I thought was very evident need to be supported and taken care of. And it was like no recognition that I was even falling. There was no, I was like, why am I in a household when I can't even trust the person to see that I'm in distress? And that hurt me so deeply of why am I in a 10-year marriage if I can't even trust this person to catch me when I'm falling? Isn't that what
Did
marriage is?
did that person play an important role when you talk about rage, when you talk about roar? Was that person, was he the only one, or was he one of them who had a major share in contributing to what it was?
Going all the way back to even before I was born. There was, I didn't realize at the time of how much anger my mother was carrying, being in this very traditional approach to marriage. It wasn't about love. It was about her parents and his parents, my dad's parents picked the children. And so this semi-arranged marriage, not quite arranged fully, but it was a semi-arranged marriage, how that contributed to my rage, how my mother felt like she had no control over her life. And my father felt like he had no control over his life. And the two together shared those emotions, which then got transferred epigenetically to me. And I carried their rage as well. So even before I was born, the list started accruing names.
And the betrayal you were talking about. So you got divorced and your husband was on a dating site. And anyone else who you think might have had so much faith and trust at that time? And did anyone betray you or stabbed you in the back? Long
Um,
list. Okay.
um,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh,
Two of my leaders on my military deployment are now gone. They've passed away at young ages. I say young, late 50s, early 60s. So I want to be respectful, but if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, I would have put their names on that list.
so it was everywhere. I think what I've understood so far, life didn't give you a fair chance to prove happiness, satisfaction, love that you deserved.
Support. Yeah.
Support, yeah, definitely support. So you deserve everything, and life didn't give you that. It could be from your superiors, as you said. It could be your ex-husband, could be your friends, anyone else. So yeah, it's a very deep, intense story. So I think this is where the conversation becomes incredibly important, because today millions of people are struggling emotionally. They may look fine externally, for example, social media. Everyone comes, hey, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, I'm this, I'm doing this, or I'm at this restaurant, or I'm holidaying in Hawaii or Italy or whatever. But internally, they feel exhausted, disconnected, anxious, or numb. And
Mm-hmm.
many don't even realize that they're carrying unresolved trauma. So let me ask you this: what do people misunderstand about trauma?
Most people don't know they have trauma because they've already disconnected their head from their heart. They're not feeling their body. So the body can't even send the signal to say, hey, we've got a problem. The telephone cord was cut.
So, for example, tomorrow, if I need help and I'm facing some trauma in my life, how would I know? And how would I go and seek help?
We usually don't. And this is why I wrote the book, Trauma Whispers Before It Roars,
Yeah.
because we don't really understand trauma when it's whispering. We only understand it when it's roaring, when it's getting really loud, when something goes wrong, when a relationship is dysfunctional, when it's affecting production at work. We don't really think about trauma and PTSD until it's really interfering with our life. We're not seeing it when it's subtle and whispering through our home, through our relationships, through our physical body and well being. We're not catching it there. We're catching it when it starts to get really loud.
Do you believe trauma can remain trapped in the body long after the event itself is over?
Oh, absolutely. That's where we get a lot of diseases and disorders. And that's part of my research, is showing that what we thought was just a medical condition or a genetic condition is a trauma condition, that the body is holding the trauma to such a degree that it's now causing a dis-ease or a disorder. And I've proven that in working with my clients of reversing diagnoses. And I'm not making medical claims here
Yes.
for those watching internationally. I'm not making medical claims or mental health claims. What I'm saying is I have worked with clients to heal their trauma, which then alleviated or completely reversed the physical disease that was presenting as the roar to the trauma they were holding on to.
Okay. And you combine psychology, emotional healing,
Yeah.
and metaphysics in your work.
Yeah.
How do these three worlds connect together?
In having these enhancements, the hearing, seeing, feeling that other people don't have at the same dial, there are people who are sensitive. But in my case, when I'm working with a client, I connect into their nervous system, and the nervous system will start talking to me through my nervous system. So if there's something wrong with the left hip, my left hip will start to ache. Or maybe it's my right hip if I'm mirroring them energetically. So that part of my body will start to say, hey, this is where we need to go. And then the voice will connect to their higher self, their soul, their spirit, the chi or the prana within. And it'll say, this is what's going on. This is where the issue is. Have them go here, go back in time to this age, this memory, this point, this event. And so I've got this enhanced data coming into me, which is communicating with the person that I'm working with.
How do you,
So
you said mirroring the pain
yeah,
or the energy. How do you do that? How do you transform the energy?
no idea. I don't know that answer yet. I just know it happens, and it happens for some people really loudly. Like my body will get it very intensely. And that's
Do you just touch their hands or hold their hands and
no,
then
sure.
think something positive coming?
No, I have clients in 17 countries. Most of my clients are not even in my time zone. It's just like this, but it'd be on Zoom. And with consent from them, I connect in and I'll start to hear things come in about what they're experiencing. And then I don't give them that answer. I'm not a psychic reader, but I take them through a modality, a metaphysical modality, which I have. I don't know where it came from or where I got it from. I just have it for use. And then it takes them outside of time and space to heal. So it's not mental health. It's not a psychotherapeutic modality like eye movement desensitization or reprocessing. It's taking someone deeper into a deeper space of consciousness like psychedelics would. But we're having a conversation and I am helping guide that person. And so
Okay.
I'm walking them through from a heightened state of awareness. And I don't know how I have it. I just know I have it.
Okay. So the word metaphysics, I think many people gets uncomfortable with that word. So what do you think? What is the metaphysics?
I have to use the word metaphysics to be true to who I am, because it is not just academic training, which I have. I have a significant amount of psychology training. I've never studied any psychology-based modality. I don't have any psychotherapeutic background. I don't offer those services, but I have studied a lot of books, authors, pioneers in psychology and neuroscience, brain training. So I have that as a service, but I can't ignore the fact that I have this added feature that allows me to have more data than the average person. You can't study for this. You can't buy it. You can't seek it out. It comes to you. And so I have this feature that allows me to go really deep with someone, to be really intimate. And then I also have my academic training. I also have my self-taught training and my own research to help walk someone through a deeper space. So when I talk about metaphysics, I can't ignore that part of who I am. I have
Okay.
to include it. And for someone who's scared of the word, which I understand because belief systems impact how we heal.
It does.
No matter how much someone is suffering, if what I'm offering does not fit in their belief system, it will not work. I will not even connect to that person. I don't have consent. And so I can't work with people if their belief system thinks that the word metaphysics is scary. They have to be willing to move the fence line of their beliefs a little bit to breathe new information coming in.
Annie, what have you discovered about human pain and emotional suffering that genuinely shocked even you?
What has shocked me in the research, and I say research, in the patterns that I'm seeing, in the observations, and then I also have this, the earpiece in my ear that says, pay attention to this. This is important.
Yes.
I'll be seeing someone do something and I feel like it's an odd thing to do. And then the voice will say, pay attention to what they're doing, watch that pattern and see where else it repeats. I think we suffer more than we need to, a whole lot more than we need to. And if we can heal ourselves, we are contributing to the healing of a nation or a country or a community. We are changing belief systems. If we are in a society of suffering and suffering is considered acceptable in our society, like being the victim is acceptable, being in pain is acceptable, let's manage the pain. This is our culture, especially in the United States. If you're in pain, it gets managed with prescription or it gets managed with frequent visits to the doctor.
Okay.
There's not a goal to heal the pain. There's not a goal to get back to the root problem and cross over medical with mental health, because so much of what we are experiencing and suffering is medical and mental health. It is physical and mental. Much of suffering is not necessary. But if our beliefs take on that suffering gives us credibility or it gives us attention or it gives us something, then the suffering is helping us even though it's hurting us.
You have also mentioned helping people through transformation or extraordinary transformation. Can
Yeah.
you share one story in brief that completely changed your understanding of what humans are capable of?
Oh, humans all capable of something. We're all here to contribute something that is beyond normal, beyond current culture. I've worked with people. I had a client. She had breast cancer. That is
Okay.
now, but she had a letter from hospice saying, okay, go die. You have 3 months left to live. We're going to put you in hospice care for palliative care to make life as easy as possible for you to cross over. And then in working with her, we started uncovering all these internal statements like, not worth it. No one's going to love me. I'm fat. I'm just pages of this. Part of her journey is healing herself to then go speak out to others to help them not suffer through their own internal low self-worth. So
Okay.
her self-loathing was so deep, it was poisoning her own body. And her soul or the higher self said, no, that's not your path. You're not here to die. You're here to get to the brink of death to understand why you need to come back and start speaking out.
Yeah.
And so for her power is going to be in her voice. But I have other clients that have the ability of connecting into master teachers and spirit guides and these really high vibrational, wise elders beyond our reality. And their job is to take that wisdom and then implement it back here on earth to other people, to preach what they're learning, to teach it to take that to make this world a little bit better of a place. So the metaphysical gifts that people come to me with, sometimes they're fringe. It's, I see dead people. Okay, what are we going to do with that? Can we bring comfort to people in connecting them to their loved ones? Can we find a way to help humanity in some way? Because I don't do entertainment things. People, if they're going to come to me for entertainment, that's not my role. I'm here to make the world a better place. So everyone has something within them that would be considered, we can't measure it. It's not repeatable, reliable, predictable. Not everyone can do it. So therefore it's metaphysical. And yet everyone has something that can help contribute to making this world a little bit better, a little bit easier to walk.
Indeed. Annie, do you think modern society has become emotionally disconnected from itself? Big time?
I can't speak for where you are. I can definitely speak for where I am. And that answer is off the charts.
Okay.
The United States is an incredibly dissociated country as a whole. As a nation, people are not connected to themselves. They're not connected to the people in their household. Everyone's on their phone. They're not even looking at each other. They're not
As a matter of fact, it's everywhere. It's not only where you are, where I am. I reckon it's everywhere because of screen addiction and because of so many things. People are self-centric, selfish, and just wants to be with what they are. They are so high time disconnected with everyone. Let it be family, let it be friends, let it be work colleagues, or let it be something else.
And yet we heal in community.
We do.
Our nervous systems heal. They heal when they can co-regulate. When a household cares about each other, they're going to heal faster than someone living by themselves because we co-regulate to heal. Our energy connects like invisible vines or invisible threads, and they heal together. And if everyone's separated in a household, that goes out into the schools, into the workplaces, into friendships, that ripples out. And then that ripples out into the communities, and that ripples out into the nation. And now we've got all these people that are they're not thinking about us. They're thinking about I. And the me and mine mentality does not heal a society. The contribution to the collective, the grouping, the household, the friends as a whole, the communities, whether it's geographic or it's interests like sports teams or maybe it's local neighborhood. If all of us are not on the same page of wanting to take care of each other, then we're making it harder to heal. And we are making it harder for people to help each other grow.
Because you just said we heal together, we heal in a community, but we suffer silently. So that is what I was coming to.
Yeah.
Because today we live in a world where people can look successful online while privately feeling broken. So why do you think so many people are silently suffering?
Denial.
Denial. So they live in the world of denial that nothing is wrong with me?
Yeah, because something wrong with me means that I'm weak, I'm less than, I'm not good enough. We were really honest with ourselves. And it's really hard, especially when men are raised to not feel emotion. Boys don't cry, suck it up, be a man. And so now we've got a large population learning to not feel their emotions. If we can't feel our emotions, how do we connect to another human?
Do you think loneliness is becoming one of the biggest silent epidemics in our society?
I think it's screaming.
It is.
Yeah. Is its own trauma, its own toxicity, its own pain. It creates physical pain. We know from medical research that people that don't have people they can rely on will have greater symptoms and they will die earlier. We've got this through the adverse childhood experience studies. We've got this through the Harvard study on adult development. We understand how toxic loneliness is. And we understand how powerful community is.
It is.
And that's not even me talking from metaphysics. That's me talking, these studies exist in a scientific, public publicly accessible domain.
Annie, somebody who's watching this right now feel emotionally stuck, overwhelmed, mentally exhausted. Where should they begin?
I think there's simple things that we can do if we're feeling mentally exhausted,
Mhm.
but find the thing that helps you connect back. For some people, it's walking in nature, having bare foot on ground and grounding into grass or dirt or being near the roots of a tree. For other people, that doesn't work. For them, it's being a part of a basketball team. So, whatever that person is, if they're feeling fatigued, first try to find the connection, a connection with nature, with people. Also, start to look within because that fatigue is a message. It's a messenger and it's saying something's wrong and we're being overworked.
Okay. I want to talk about your upcoming book because the title alone is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Trauma Whispers Before It Roars. So, what does it mean?
I walk into it through the lens of a metaphysical trauma researcher. So, my first story is the story of me being on that C 130 cargo plane and taking ground fire. And I talk about what we have for ammunition to move us through difficult times. And I talk about how do we name a trauma stone? Because sometimes when I'm working with clients, very often they're uncovering something that they thought was insignificant, and yet their nervous system, the mind said, oh, that's no big deal. And the body's like, oh, yes, it is. And that contradiction created tension. So I talk about some of those things and how we can name them. How do we name our trauma stones? And then I take people on a tour of their home and I say, let's go through the major rooms in the home. Is there anything in the home that's showing us our nervous system reflecting back at us? Do we have piles of laundry? Do we have dishes piling up? Is there a lack of food in the fridge? Do we have sofas that all face the TV but not each other? Are we doing things that are showing that there's depression or trauma or concern that needs to be addressed? And I go through then the next chapters. Let's talk about how we interact with our pets. Are we treating them like babies and getting them a baby carriage and putting outfits on them and talking to them in baby talk? And could that be a reflection of our childhood and unmet needs? Are we reflecting that out into our pets when really that's our subconscious trying to communicate to the conscious of who we are and saying, hey, we got some unresolved stuff to work on. And so I take
That's
people
right.
on a journey all the way up to understanding the 6 layers of belonging in the when I talk about household, self, house, friends and family and so on. I talk them
Did
on why that's
writing
important.
did writing this book become part of your own healing journey?
I gained 17 pounds writing this book because
Okay.
it
And
started
it
off
took you more than
6
six
years.
years, if I'm not
6 years.
wrong. That is emotional excavation, deep down, digging something, if I'm not wrong.
It pulled up a lot of trauma. In writing, in pulling these stories, it opened up the channel to remember other stories I had suppressed or forgotten. I'm like, oh yeah, there's that one. Oh yeah, there's that one. And then putting it all together, you're seeing the same story over and over again, which forces the author to have to go through it again. So there were times when I would start to write and I had to walk away because I wasn't ready to face that story yet. It was really tough for me to create.
And what was the hardest part of the book to write emotionally?
The vulnerability, because it's, do I want the world to see me and hear my stories? There's stories of me, there's stories of clients, there's stories of strangers in the parking lot. But the part that I wrote about with me was more detailed because it's my story. I can own it. But gosh, did it feel vulnerable? Do I want the world to see me in in this scene of brokenness? Am I willing to share that to connect to somebody else in their brokenness? And that was something I had to have a reckoning with. I had to acknowledge that was necessary, but it took me a while to be okay with letting that story go into print.
And if the younger Annie, the version of you in pain years ago,
Mhm.
could read this book today, what do you think she would feel?
That's interesting you say that because that's actually written at the very end of my book.
Okay.
I go back to visit my younger self and
So
I tell her, because she thought she was really bad at English.
in English.
In English, yeah. I failed English all 4 quarters of fourth grade. And primary school through secondary school was challenging for me because I had this idea that I wasn't good.
But English is not my first language, it's my third language or fourth language.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
oh, I can say you can speak well, but maybe written communication, you might be having some issues at that time.
I felt very awkward trying to communicate my needs, which perpetuated the belief that I couldn't communicate. And I was navigating my parents on the brink of divorce, being separated around that same time. So my traumas interfered with my ability to think. But I interpreted that as being poor at English. And so I misjudged my capabilities based on what I understood and had awareness for at the time. I didn't know anything about trauma. I didn't know anything about conflict at home. I just thought I must be dumb if I can't write this report. And if I can't present this report in front of the class, there must be something wrong with me.
And you've also said, Annie, that you have helped blind people see again, but
Yeah.
you've never helped someone with perfect eyesight see something they weren't ready to see. That
Yep.
line stayed with me. So, what do you mean by that?
I have literally helped someone reverse full blindness.
Is it possible?
Yeah, if it's trauma induced, it's absolutely possible. Now, if there was an acute injury like shrapnel, glass, car accident, that's not my lane. But if it's onset adult blindness induced by trauma, and I know the medical community is yes, if trauma causes something and we lift the trauma, can reverse it in most cases, not all. But in most cases, we can reverse it because then the internal system is not pounding to protect. And I watched people reverse diagnoses enough to say that we got to start paying attention to this. Not enough to make medical claims, but enough to say, hey, if I can do this, we got to start figuring out why I can do this. We got to start researching how it's possible and why we're not pursuing this for other people.
What does healing actually look like in real life? Because many people think healing means becoming happy all the time,
No.
but it's not.
Healing is not being in a state of suffering. So healing, for most people, when I ask them what healing means, for them, they say it's to feel lighter, to not feel so burdened, not feel so heavy, to not feel so drained. They want to feel lighter and to have that freedom back. So if someone was having mobility issues because of trauma and we return mobility, that's a freedom. It doesn't necessarily mean happiness, but it's returning a freedom to do something they couldn't do before, to feel
That's
something
right.
they couldn't feel before. Sometimes it's just the freedom to sleep a whole night.
What are some habits that quietly destroy emotional health without people realizing it?
Some of the greatest stories of reversing a disorder or a disease came from religious beliefs on how people should be and the shame that was induced for not being able to fit that. And the shame created such a story of self-loathing or low self-worth that the unworthiness created the disease or created the disorder. And again, the medical community is like, wait, hang on. I'm being very general in the statement, but I've watched enough people reverse fibromyalgia, reverse lipedema, reverse cardiac issues, reverse migraines, reverse back pain by addressing their traumas. The patterns and the stories that I have speak to something that we're not talking about.
Yeah, and you've experienced different cultures, different parts of the world. What has that taught you about humanity?
Working with people in 17 countries, I'm realizing that Loneliness is everywhere. This is from 2021 forward. So just over 5 years, almost 6 years, 17 countries. The feeling of not being seen, not being heard, not being validated seems to be global. And
Okay.
wanting to be a part of something, to be a part of a community, to be a part of a friendship circle, to be part of something seems to be global. I think we are so much more alike, even across cultural divides. We're so much more alike than we want to admit, but that would require us to be vulnerable, to step into something that's not familiar to us, to see
That's
that.
right. So, Annie, what gives your life meaning today?
The work I'm doing, I can't explain it with words as much as I can feel it, but there's people who feel fulfilled in their job, like their mind feels satisfied or their body feels satisfied. My soul, my inner knowing feels incredibly satisfied to be on this path. And it comes with such a bright light within me that even the hard parts, I'm still illuminated within me to move through the hard parts because it is so purpose driven.
All right, Annie, let's do a quick rapid fire round. First thing that comes to your mind, only one word or one sentence. All right, one word that describes your journey.
Wild.
Wild, okay. Biggest fear you conquered.
The biggest fear I've conquered is being able to do it myself, with that trust in myself.
One
Not have trust in
lesson,
myself.
one lesson PTSD taught you.
To have more compassion for other people suffering from trauma.
A place in the world that changed you forever.
Wait.
Okay. What's something people assume about you that's completely wrong?
I think with the academic community, it's an immediate assumption that I'm not credible and I'm too woo-woo.
Ah, okay. And if you could heal one thing in humanity instantly, what would it be?
Loneliness, we heal in connection with others.
What does peace mean to you today?
Being on my path, even when it gets dark.
So, Annie, this has been one of the deepest conversation I've had on this show. And what makes your story powerful is not just the trauma, it's what you chose to become after the trauma. And so, after everything, you've experienced pain, PTSD, collapse, awakening, rebuilding. What do you believe is the real purpose of suffering?
Compassion and dignity.
Okay. And if somebody watches this right now feels completely broken inside, what would you want them to hear from you?
You don't need to be fixed. You're not broken. You need to remember who you are and find that journey. And it's not always an easy journey to go back home to self, but it is one of the most rewarding things we can do for ourselves.
Very well said. And I've got a last question for you. When your story is fully written one day, what legacy do you hope you leave behind?
Two things in my legacy is I want people to understand the power of the invisible part of who we are in mind, body, soul, mind, body, spirit. That is just as equally powerful in healing as the other two attributes of our whole. So we need to have more doctors of the spirit. And the other is the 6 layers of belonging framework that I've talked about today, that if we understand that our trauma leaks into our house, into our friends, into our community, into our nation, so does healing.
Annie, thank you for being here. To everyone watching, if this conversation moved you, challenged you, or gave you a new perspective on trauma, healing, and emotional pain or transformation, like, subscribe, and share the episode with someone who may need it. Because sometimes one conversation can change the direction of a person's life. And thank you everyone for watching another episode of Ravi Athale Perspective. Until next time, bye.